Who do you have more in common with? The ambitious businessman or the free-spirited hippie? I'll give you my answer to this question at the end of the video. I recently took a road trip to a beautiful beachside holiday destination. It's famous for its surf breaks and its alternative lifestyle. Now, what often happens, at least here in Australia, is that after the hippies have identified the most beautiful parts of the country, real estate developers move in, and suddenly there are all these incredible mansions built. What you're left with is a strange dichotomy. Is this beachside town a hippie paradise, a place to explore alternative lifestyles? Or is it a playground for the rich and wealthy? I was there one night looking at the sunset, and it was fascinating to see these two groups sitting there enjoying the same view. On the one hand, you had the absolutely stereotypical filthy hippies. They'd been surfing all day, they were hanging out in their vans, they're cooking on little camp stoves, there's men, there's women, both of them have dreadlocks. And then on the other hand, you have these very wealthy, prim and proper people who have come from a holiday from the major cities. It looks as though these two groups and these two different lifestyles couldn't be further apart. But here they are, sitting, enjoying the same sunset. And I couldn't help but wonder, which one of them is happier? So that's what we're going to answer in this video. We're going to explore the benefits of both different lifestyles and answer this question: who gets more enjoyment out of life, the ambitious businessman or the lazy hippie? In order to be happy, you need to feel safe and secure. And at least from a financial perspective, it seems like the businessman has the edge. He's wealthy, so he can afford fancy restaurants, luxury accommodation, and he's also secure in the knowledge that his money will act as a protection against any crisis that comes along. Be it a medical emergency or perhaps a global economic meltdown, he should have enough money to basically ensure his survival, which will give him a sense of peace and comfort. However, the flip side to that is that the more you have to lose. And it's a time-tested tale that people who own a lot of things tend to get extremely paranoid about losing them. There's a sense that the more you own, the more anxiety you have. On the other side, the hippie has nothing and therefore has nothing to lose. Because he has no concern for protecting his assets and making sure he has enough money in the bank account, his life is considerably less stressful. That is, of course, until a major crisis like a medical emergency comes along. However, if a financial crisis were to hit, you could make the case that the hippie is in a better position, because he's already well aware of how to barter with people, how to live simply, how to do just odd jobs, whereas the businessman is used to a certain degree of wealth and opulence, and if he has to downgrade his lifestyle, it's likely to stress him a lot more than the hippie, who's already used to living at the bottom of society. But what about a sense of purpose? For those of you familiar with my videos, you'll know from the scientific studies that I've explored, or the works of Jordan Peterson, having a sense of meaning is absolutely essential to your happiness. One of my favorite philosophers once said that happiness comes from equal parts of creation and contemplation. And I think that these two aspects perfectly describe the divide between the businessman and the hippie. The businessman is all creation. When he wakes up, he knows what he has to do. He has purpose. He has ambition. He's driven to achieve his best. And because he's doing something that he's good at, he has a sense of efficacy, which is great for his happiness. So he's well covered in terms of creation, but how much time does he have for contemplation, to look back on his achievements with pride, or even just to look out across the world and appreciate all that's beautiful and magical? This is where the hippie comes in. He might not create anything, but he has a huge amount of time for contemplation, to really enjoy the pleasures of life. The world is full of beautiful places, and there are so many interesting things to explore and learn about, and the hippie has time to do all of them. While the hippie has plenty of time for contemplation, what he lacks is creation. Does he produce something? Is he good at anything? Does he have any sense of purpose other than meeting his immediate pleasures? After a while, I can imagine that this lack of purpose would begin to gnaw at you. You might even begin to feel bored. And perhaps this is the explanation for why so many hippies use marijuana. Another important consideration is who has the greatest capacity for enjoyment. While both of them are sitting at the beach looking at the sunset, which one of them is actually having a more pleasurable experience? There's no doubting that the businessman is having a more luxurious experience. He's sitting there drinking $60 wine, he's going to go have a 5-star meal afterwards, he's feeling relaxed after his 2-hour massage in the afternoon that he could easily afford. On the surface, all of this sounds extremely relaxing, but you have to ask yourself, what's his mindset like? Is it possible for you to work really, really hard to make lots of money and not carry that stress from work over into your relaxation time? There's also the question of how frequently he's able to get away from work to go and do something like watch the sunset at the beach. The contrast is the hippie guy, who's not stressed at all about work because he doesn't work. He's completely present with the sun, the clouds, the waves. He's enjoying every moment of it. Perhaps he's playing guitar or writing poetry. But while it seems that superficially the hippie is able to be more immersed in the experience because of the lack of stress, there's also the consideration that for him, this is an everyday experience. Watching the sunset and hanging out on the beach is not a contrasting experience for him like it is for the businessman. For the businessman, he's on holiday. This is a special treat. Whereas for the hippie, this is his everyday life. If you do the same thing over and over again, even if it's something as pleasurable as watching a sunset, your enjoyment of it will diminish over time. This is something that the businessman understands well. There's only so long you can sit on a beach sipping a cocktail before you get bored out of your mind and you want to go back to work. You want to create and achieve something. It's why people who often go traveling for 6 to 12 months end up volunteering for a non-profit or an orphanage somewhere, because the idea of just spending all of your time seeking pleasure isn't actually bringing you any happiness. You need meaning, you need purpose. Which brings us to our last consideration, which is contribution. Which one of these two people is contributing more to society, is improving people's lives and therefore happy because they can see that they're making a difference? It's easy to see how the businessman is contributing to the lives of others. He's creating a product or providing a service that other people want to the point where they're willing to pay money in order to get it. On top of that, he's contributing taxes to his country and most likely providing for a family. Other people's lives are improved because of him. Where this could become problematic is if his ambition turns to greed. Then he's no longer helping people and improving their lives, but manipulating them, exploiting them for his own gains. The hippie looks on to the unethical businessman and reassures himself that because he's not interested in money, he's not in danger of becoming like him. He won't exploit, lie, and cheat in order to make money. And so, while he's not harming anybody, he's also not really contributing anything either. In fact, he's likely to be diminishing the quality of other people's lives because he still needs money, and where is this going to come from? Well, in all likelihood, the welfare system, or possibly from close family members. In essence, the hippie is taking care of himself, and a case could be made that his lifestyle choice is extremely selfish, just as selfish as the businessman who's interested in only making money. And so we arrive at our question, who's really happier? Is it the lazy hippie or the ambitious businessman? As you can see, there are pros and cons to both types of lifestyle, but ultimately, it's going to be an individual matter because it depends on your temperament. It's going to depend on you and your particular personality. Some people cannot live without the security of knowing that they have a lot of money saved away in the bank. If they didn't have that money, they would be overwhelmed with anxiety and they would not be happy. But for other people, they could care less. They'd rather be poor and spend their time playing guitar, surfing, and traveling the world for 6 months of the year. There is no one-size-fits-all. It's a spectrum. Imagine the filthiest, laziest hippie on one end and the most greedy, ambitious businessman on the other. Ask yourself where you sit on this spectrum. Do you lean more towards the businessman side or the hippie side? For me, I probably find myself about 70% of the hippie side. I just think that there are so many beautiful places in the world to visit, so many interesting people to meet, so many subjects to educate myself upon, that I need a lot of free time in order to be able to indulge these various interests. And I can't imagine one particular line of work being sufficiently interesting for me to dedicate so much of my time. Having said that, I absolutely value meaningful work. I need a sense of purpose in order to be happy. For me, a lot of that meaningful work comes from tending to my personal relationships, friends, family, romantic partners, as well as engaging in creative projects and working on this YouTube channel. And so while I sit more towards the contemplation side of the spectrum, I'm in absolutely no way judging people who are more focused on creation. The world absolutely needs those people in order to keep moving. Like I said, there is no one size that fits all, and the world is a much better place with having people all over the spectrum. It's more diverse, it's more interesting, and it allows us to learn from each other. This is why I advise people to make friends from all different walks of life. You can learn something from everybody, whether it's a hippie who's never worked a day in their life, they'll have an interesting philosophy on how the world works, and also the ambitious entrepreneur who wants to give a TED Talk one day. He'll also have a lot of interesting things to say, and you can learn equally from both. I also hope that you enjoyed the photos that I included in this video. I've been experimenting with spending a little bit more money, investing back into the channel, and improving the quality of the videos. And I really want to thank my Patreon subscribers because your monthly donations are allowing me the financial freedom to make that investment. So thank you. Make sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can see more videos like this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again next time.